Check one, two, check. Check one, two, 1, 2, 3, check, check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, check. Check 1, 2. That's one. That's one. Check, check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, check, check. Check 1. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, check. Check 1, 2, 3, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, check. Check 1, 2, check, check. Check 1, 2. Check, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2. Check, check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2. Check, check 1, 2.
I'm just thinking of like a trippy model for all the cameras in the
Check 1, 2. I'll pass the one. check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Angel, I'm hearing the mics are hot. Angel, the mics are hot. As long as you
Check.
don't. Thanks everyone for joining us for today's media availability. Merci de vous joindre à nous pour le point de presse aujourd'hui. On va commencer avec Frédéric Papin à Radio-Canada. You may ask one question with a follow-up.
OK, Monsieur le maire, oui, je pense
ça?
que c'est bon. On a fait
Oui,
les tests
ça va?
déjà.
OK.
Oui, ça va,
OK,
Renaud,
très
on
bien.
est good?
Oui.
La Ligue de hockey féminin, je pense que ça viendrait prendre le dessus de toute la conversation. Est-ce que ça met le projet en péril?
Non, je ne pense pas, parce que ce que j'ai entendu de Amy Shear, c'est que, tout d'abord, je tiens à souligner que j'aime le charge, tout le monde aime le charge. Nous voulons que le charge auront beaucoup de succès à Ottawa. Alors, ce n'est pas un enjeu, nous n'avons pas des différences sur l'avenir pour le charge à Ottawa. C'est seulement une négociation pour leur contrat à l'Arena. Et ce que j'ai entendu aujourd'hui, c'est qu'il y a une opportunité de parler sur le contrat et déterminer une solution. Alors, il y a un montant, il y a une différence entre leur objectif et les objectifs d'OSEG, mais c'est peut-être une occasion de continuer les négociations et trouver une solution avec des autres revenus pour le charge, avec des autres opportunités, et j'espère que nous pouvons trouver une solution propre pour le charge et pour les résidents d'Ottawa.
Je veux vous entendre sur le fait, est-ce qu'on pourrait revoir le plan juste pour l'Arena pour qu'il y ait plus de sièges, ou est-ce que ça, c'est complètement out of the table?
Je ne pense pas que c'est possible à ce moment. C'est important de souligner que ce plan a commencé en 2021. Le conseil municipal de 2021, avant de ce mandat, ont adopté le plan et demandé à l'équipe, le personnel de la ville, de trouver un plan. C'était unanime au conseil municipal en 2021. Et puis, le personnel de la ville, chaque fois, il a fait exactement ce que le conseil a demandé. Trouver un plan pour Lansdowne, trouver un plan pour un nouveau centre, un centre pour les sports, pour la culture, trouver une solution pour le stade. Alors, je pense que c'est trop tard pour trouver un autre plan. Ce que j'ai entendu de Wendy Stephenson, c'est que ça va prendre 2 ou 3 ans. Ça va coûter peut-être une centaine de millions de dollars. Ce n'est pas possible à ce moment. Est-ce qu'il y a des petits changements? Peut-être, mais je ne pense pas que c'est possible à ce moment de changer à 8500 sièges ou quelque chose comme ça. Ce n'est pas réalistique à ce moment. C'est trop tard.
On va aller à Albert Rolla, le téléjournal.
Bonjour.
Allô. Je poursuis les questions de mon collègue. On a cru comprendre que finalement, la Ligue serait d'accord si vous allongiez $1 million supplémentaires par an. Est-ce que là, ça va être une solution, une possibilité?
Alors, moi, je ne soutiens pas des fonds des contribuables d'Ottawa pour une équipe professionnelle de hockey, pour quelqu'un qui a des milliards de dollars, qui habite à Los Angeles. Je ne pense pas que les résidents d'Ottawa veulent quelque chose comme ça. Mais s'il y a des options, s'il y a des opportunités de trouver des autres revenus pour le charge, peut-être que ça sera une solution. Peut-être il y a une opportunité de trouver des autres solutions. Et j'espère que OSEG et le charge et l'équipe féminine, la Ligue féminine peut continuer leurs négociations, parce qu'il y avait des négociations jusqu'à quelques jours. Et peut-être il y a des solutions pour et je ne sais pas si c'est $1 million ou c'est un peu moins que ça, mais peut-être il y a une solution pour le Charge. Et n'oublions pas qu'il y a une autre arena à Ottawa où les Charges ont joué l'année passée. Peut-être il y a une solution pour le Charge de jouer quelques matchs par année à Centre Canadian Tire et quelques matchs à Lansdowne. Toutes les options sont possibles. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, where did we start? The gap, right? Yeah. Yeah, sure. Look, there's a gap. What I heard today is there was a negotiation that was taking place, and there was a gap of about $1 million. I don't think the people of Ottawa would support taxpayers giving a billionaire in Los Angeles $1 million a year so that the Charge keep playing in Ottawa. So I don't see that as a solution. I'd be interested to see if anybody on council proposes it, but I think more realistically, there's an opportunity for the PWHL and OSEG to sit down and look at other revenue opportunities like Amy Shear was suggesting and see if there's a way to bridge the gap and find solutions. And let's not forget there's another arena in Ottawa. And by the time the new arena at Lansdowne is built, we may know a lot more about the future of the Ottawa Senators Arena on LeBreton Flats. And maybe that's an option for where the Charge could play some or all of their games in the future anyway. As I pointed out, they're playing games in NHL arenas in other cities. So there's lots of ways the Charge can stay in Ottawa. Lots of different ways they can stay in Ottawa, playing a combination of their games at Lansdowne and at an NHL, a current or future NHL arena, or playing all their games in the future at an NHL arena. There's lots of different ways they can stay in Ottawa. It's a financial question that has been raised now about how we figure out a way to make it viable for them financially.
Et plus largement, si la charge s'en allait, mais aussi d'autres, les contrats avec OSEC, je pense au Red Blacks, 67 d'Ottawa, après 2032, imaginons qu'ils ne soient plus à Lansdowne. Est-ce que le projet est toujours viable?
Alors, je ne pense pas qu'il y a un problème avec les Red Blacks ou les 67 ou le Rouge et Noir, je pense que c'est le nom en français, mais je pense qu'il y aura peut-être un engagement plus long pour le Rouge et Noir et les 67. Et nous savons qu'il y a beaucoup de usagers pour cet centre. Il y a une équipe de basket, il y a le volleyball, il y a le patinage, il y a beaucoup d'usagers. Nous avons entendu aujourd'hui que Tourisme Ottawa a beaucoup de plans pour le curling, pour les autres événements comme ça. Alors, ce ne dépend pas sur une seule équipe. Et une équipe qui va jouer 12 ou 13 matchs par année. Alors, c'est un centre pour tout le monde et ça ne dépend pas sur une seule équipe.
Thank you. We'll go to Aidan Helmer at the Ottawa Citizen.
Hi, Aidan.
Mayor. 12 councillors had voted for more time to digest the sheer volume of information that was shared in these reports. Now we're hearing from the PWHL as well that this, or from the Charge in particular, that this caught them off guard. Do you regret?
PWHL and Charge is the same thing, but
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you regret not allowing more time to digest this information and share this information with some of these partners before this vote is coming up?
Which information in particular?
Just all of the reports that were released 9 days
Right.
ago.
Well, I think what we saw today is that the Charge were clear. They've known for a long time the arena was going to be this size. They were negotiating a lease on the basis of the arena being that size. So it was not a surprise to them a few days ago when the report came out that the arena would be this size. They've known for a long time, and they've been negotiating a lease on that basis. So we, as councillors, get large reports all the time at Planning Committee, at Finance Committee, all through the year. Sometimes those reports are a couple hundred pages, and we have a couple of weeks to digest them and read through them and develop our our questions and our angles of inquiry, and then we make a decision. And I think in this case, what's clear is not a lot has changed since the last version we voted for in 2024 or the previous version we voted for in 2023. A lot of the facts are the same in terms of the plan to move forward. So it's an update. It confirms a lot of the information. Some of the financial terms are even better than we thought they were going to be. So I think we have enough time to make the decision. And in fact, I'll add, we obviously have enough time to make the decision because several councillors have already indicated how they're going to vote. So they clearly don't need more time. Several members of City Council have already gone public and said, I intend to vote this way on this project. So another week, I'm assuming, would not change their minds.
Okay. And then just on the level of consultation, I suppose, between OSEG and the city and the PWHL, there was a memo that was put out by Wendy Stephenson with an attachment from Mr. Gowdy, sort of outlining the timeline. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that and whether those negotiations or consultations were extensive enough.
Well, again, what I heard today from the testimony at committee is that the negotiations have been going on for a long time, and that there's a financial gap. That it's less about, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing in a way, but the number of seats is not really the issue. It's the financial impact of not having more seats. So the gap is a financial gap, not a gap in terms of the capacity of the arena. And so if there are ways to bridge that financial gap going forward, I strongly encourage OSEG to continue the conversations with the charge. I strongly encourage the charge to keep bringing up ideas on how that gap could be bridged, and I hope we're able to reach a successful conclusion. But again, let's remember there are a lot of different options for the charge in Ottawa. They know they have a fan base here. They know that fan base is going to grow. I still believe, as a charge fan and as someone who's been to their games and seen the energy, even if we built an arena with a 7,500 capacity or 8,500 capacity, they're going to outgrow that arena anyway. So we need to figure out a way to keep the charge in Ottawa long term when they reach a point when they're drawing 12, 13, 14,000 fans a game. And that's not going to be at Lansdowne Park, even if we add 2,000 seats to the plan right now and spend a lot of money to do so. Let's figure out a way to keep the charge in Ottawa permanently for 20, 30, 40 years. And if that's going to be the case, they probably will not be playing at Lansdowne 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now anyway.
Thank you. Next up is Leah Larocque, CTV Ottawa.
Hi, Leah.
So there was a lot of conversation with the PWHL about their commitment past 2031, but the Red Blacks haven't really committed past 2032. So are you equally worried about the Red Blacks and the future of these franchises that are going to be at Lansdowne?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting that some of the people who have raised concerns about the length of commitment by the Red Blacks in the 67s are not as concerned about the fact that the PWHL has not been able to make a commitment beyond that same time frame, in fact, 1 year earlier. So they're very similar, but I think, there will be a lot of questions, I presume, when we get to that tomorrow, when we are questioning staff and we're questioning OSEG. I imagine there will be questions about the length of commitment, and I hope that the owners of the Red Blacks and the 67s are prepared to make a longer commitment to Ottawa than just 2032 if we're to proceed with this plan. So I think, I hope they are prepared to do that. I'm sure they're going to be asked to do that by councillors, maybe even me. But what we heard today from the charge is they can't make a commitment past 2031. I'm looking forward to the answer from the Red Blacks and the 67s.
And a lot of the revenue for Lansdowne, well, a lot of the financial plan relies on future revenue. But if the PWHL leaves, is that not a loss of potential revenue that could make Lansdowne 2.0 successful?
Let's remember the PWHL right now represent 12 or 13 nights out of 365 at Lansdowne Park. If it's not the right financial deal for the city, then if it's not the right financial deal for the charge and they decide not to play at Lansdowne Park, the arena or the event center will not necessarily be empty on those nights. There will be other people who will want to use the event center. There are multiple partners that have been using Lansdowne and have plans to use Lansdowne in the future. There's a basketball team. There are curling events. There are boxing events, cultural events, comedy events, music. So it's not like if the Charge say we're not going to play at Lansdowne, then automatically there's 13 nights a year where the arena's just black and it's closed. There are going to be other people who will use it on those nights. But let's not think of it that way, because I think there is a way forward for the Charge to be in Ottawa and playing some, if not all of their games at Lansdowne in the short term, and eventually some of their games at Lansdowne and maybe some of their games somewhere else.
But can
Thank you.
the same not be said though?
You
about
can- go ahead.
The Red Blacks though, they play less games. It's like 8 nights a year versus.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that you're making exactly my point, which is the future of Lansdowne is not dependent on one sports team. The future of Lansdowne is it's a center for the entire community. The Red Blacks use it, the 67s use it, the Blackjacks use it, the Charge use it. Ottawa Tourism brings events to Ottawa: rugby, soccer, volleyball, basketball, curling, figure skating, conventions, comedy, music, festivals. There are all kinds of users of Lansdowne Park. So it doesn't depend on one team or another. It's a huge facility for the city.
Next, we'll go to Kate Porter, CBC Radio.
Hello, Kate.
So the PWHL had said that you had a conversation with them and told them not to discuss seating capacity publicly?
That's never happened. No.
So what she was saying,
Well,
what's
when
your,
I think-
like she describes sitting in her living room, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, no, I think there were two different conversations she was describing. I never asked the PWHL to delegate at a committee meeting. Never had any conversation with the PWHL or Jinsey Rose or Chris Burkett or Amy Shear or Jana Hefford about delegating at a committee meeting. I have no idea what those conversations involved. I assume that was someone else that asked them to delegate. I did not ask them to not talk about anything. I did not speak to them about any of their public messaging. The conversation I had with Amy Shear in June of 2014 was that they were still negotiating a lease with OSEG. I don't remember all the details of that conversation, and I don't think I took notes. I do remember her saying, we're not going to negotiate publicly. We're not going to stand in the way of this arena. We have some concerns. I remember thinking after that conversation, let's do whatever we can to increase the capacity of the arena. And subsequent to that, based on conversations between OSEG and city staff, the capacity of the arena was increased from 5,500 to 6,600. That happened after that conversation that I had with Amy Shear. I had other conversations that, occasionally Amy or another executive would be at a Charge game and I would see them and I would say, we're doing everything we can to have the maximum capacity possible within the plan. But I never asked them not to talk publicly about anything. I never gave them any advice on their communications. They can say whatever they want, whenever they want. I don't control the PWHL.
okay. My other thought is we're seeing a lot of very specific questioning about the ownership of the PWHL, et cetera. And I'm wondering what level of questioning and scrutiny you're also expecting out of council colleagues when we're talking about deep-pocketed partners in OSEG, because there are parallels here, you see, and yet we're seeing a lot of questioning about the ownership in LA, et cetera, but perhaps less so about, for instance, having only $1 million down on the air rights.
So I think if you look at the history of Lansdowne, there's been a lot of discussion about who owns the Red Blacks and who owns the Ottawa 67s and who our partners are in OSEG. I think the public is well aware of it. I think members of City Council are well aware of it. I think what you saw today was an opportunity to share with the public who owns the Charge, which is the Professional Women's Hockey League, and who owns the Professional Women's Hockey League, which is Mark Walter. And I don't think, in fact, I know not even every member of council knew that as of a few days ago. Whatever decisions we make, we should know who our partners are and who we're negotiating with on different things. So if there's going to be a lot of information out there in the community about the owners of OSEG and the owners of the Red Blacks and the 67s, there equally should be as much information about who owns the Charge. And again, as of a couple of days ago, there were some members of council who did not even know the Charge were not locally owned, who did not know that the Charge were owned by the league, who did not know that the league was owned by a businessman in Los Angeles, who did not know that was the same person who owns the Los Angeles Dodgers and just bid $10 billion to buy the Los Angeles Lakers. So I think the public and members of council should know who we're dealing with. And I think just as it was fair for people to ask questions about who OSEG is and who our partners are on that side, it's fair to ask questions about who our partners are going to be with the charge.
Thank you. We'll go to Arthur White-Crummy, CBC Ottawa.
Hi, Arthur.
Hi there. So I just want to make sure that I properly understood sort of the line of questioning that you had for the PWHL today. You're saying this is really about sponsorship and naming rights revenue, and there's $1 million gap between the two sides, and they just brought this whole capacity thing forward at the 11th hour to exert pressure in those negotiations.
Well, look, I can't speak to their motives. I'm not inside their heads. What I'm saying is what we learned today and what I understood up until today all along was that they were in a negotiation on a new lease for the arena that we intend to build as part of this plan. So they can't say that they were surprised that the arena was going to be a capacity of 6,600. They were negotiating a lease. And I assume when you negotiate a lease for a space and I'm sending you a draft lease and you're making some edits to it and sending it back to me, that one of the clauses in the lease would say the number of seats in the arena and the number and the capacity. So they knew, and Amy Shear acknowledged that they knew that, and they were negotiating a lease on the basis of the arena having a capacity of 6,600. They went back and forth multiple times. They were not able to conclude those negotiations before we had our committee meeting today or our council meeting next week. And so, look, they're business people. They're smart business people. They're very successful. They own multiple sports franchises. If I were in their position, the smart thing to do in that situation would be to, it's as a red herring, because as they pointed out, there's a connection between the number of seats and revenue. What I am saying is it's about the revenue. It's not about the number of seats. Then an increase in the number of seats would give them more revenue. But that's one of many different tools that can be used to increase their revenues in a way that makes the team financially viable in Ottawa.
They say all they're looking for is a seat at the table about capacity. Can that happen? What would that look like? Is there any way to give them a meaningful role in those discussions at this stage of the process? Because as I said, if they don't get that seat at the table, they might walk.
Well, I don't think anybody's saying they're going to walk, because what I heard at the end was there's a willingness to talk. There's a willingness to negotiate. There's a willingness to keep working together. That's what Amy Shear was saying at the end of the conversation. They want to be in Ottawa. They have higher attendance in Ottawa than almost any other city in the league. So I think they have a great future in Ottawa. I don't believe for one second that the Charge are going to move away from Ottawa. I don't think that's what's going on here. There's no threats have been made. That's not how I interpret what they're saying. I think they're looking for help in building a solid, viable plan where they have the revenues they need in order to stay in Ottawa. And I think between sitting down with OSEG and figuring out if there are other revenue opportunities, and also looking at the reality that over time they are likely to outgrow whatever arena gets built at Lansdowne Park, and that they should be looking at perhaps playing a few more of their games at Canadian Tire Centre as demand grows. There's a way for the Charge to stay in Ottawa. There clearly is. And I think it would make great business sense for them to stay in Ottawa. And I believe they will do that. But all I'm trying to underscore here is that it's less about the number of seats than it is about the revenues that they need to be viable. The seats are a factor in that. Ultimately, what they need, they don't want to have 2,000 more seats and not be financially viable. They just want to be financially viable. And so there's a way to, there's a way forward on that. And I get why they're bringing it up now, because it creates pressure and creates, a public sentiment, not unlike a labor negotiation, creates some pressure. And then, you feel like you got to make a deal and everybody's got to sharpen their pencils. I get that. But I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I think there's an opportunity to talk. And in terms of a seat at the table, number one, it sounds like they've had a seat at the table for a long time as they've negotiated with OSEG. And number two, we have to remember, this is not the PWHL arena. This is an event center with multiple purposes. The Charge may like to see 1,000 or 2,000 more seats. There may be some people who don't want to see 1,000 or 2,000 more seats, who think that a 5,000 or even a 4,000 seat arena would be better for their purposes. The basketball team, some of the curling events, the volleyball events, the comedy events, the music events. So if we're going to have one tenant with a seat at the table negotiating on what the capacity of the arena is, we need to have every tenant at the table. And my understanding is OSEG has listened to a multitude of people who are going to use the facility, including PWHL, and they've determined this is the sweet spot.
Thanks very much, Mayor, media. This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse.
If anybody has extra questions, I'm happy to. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just come over to the mic if you don't mind, Kate.
We'll take another question from Kate Porter, CBC Radio.
I'm hearing you talk about the gap and that it's financial and not the seats, but what do you say to residents who would want to be in those seats and have a greater chance of getting the ticket to see the charge? You see what I mean? Because we're talking about a differential here of a good, 2,500, 3,000 seats, and people want to see them.
It's tough. Look, if I owned a restaurant, which I never plan to do, but if I owned a restaurant, on Mother's Day, there's a bunch of people who want to make a reservation to take their mom out for brunch at the restaurant, and there aren't enough seats. But I can't build the restaurant to the size of the Mother's Day crowd for 365 days a year and have the operating costs associated with that and have a less than desirable atmosphere when the restaurant's 1/4 full or half full, so that I accommodate every single person on Mother's Day. People have to understand, I know that PWHL fans are very passionate, and I'm one of them, but they are one tenant in the arena that right now is committing to 13 nights and is prepared to commit only for the next few years. We have other tenants. We have other people who want to use the facility. We have to balance all of those needs. And we can't simply say, okay, we're going to spend an extra $80 to $100 million to build a larger arena for the charge, and in so doing, make it a more expensive operating environment for other users of the site, and potentially, have some of them not use it anymore because we built extra capacity for the charge, and then the charge are only committing for 3 years in the new facility anyway. I don't think that's a good investment for taxpayers, and to me, that's a bigger gap than the $1 million a year that they described. The gap of $100 million of taxpayers' money going into building a larger arena, and that arena only really being leased by the PWHL for 3 seasons, is a much bigger financial gap than the one that they described on the revenue side.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Frédéric Papin, Radio-Canada.
Peux-tu parler des droits aériens, les air rights, rapidement? Il y a une délégation qui a mentionné que ce n'est pas le 60 millions en air rights, 1 million seulement, et que tout le reste pourrait s'évaporer à long terme. Vous croyez là-dedans qu'il n'y aurait jamais les tours de condos? Et
Alors, c'est un contrat, et n'oublions pas que la construction sur les résidences, les tours, ne seront pas avant de, je ne sais pas, 2032 ou quelque chose comme ça. J'ai oublié l'horaire, mais la première étape, c'est le centre, l'aréna. La deuxième, c'est le stade et les magasins. Et c'est la troisième étape, les tours résidentiels. Alors, ce n'est pas possible, ce n'est pas réalistique pour quelqu'un de payer 65 millions de dollars maintenant pour un projet qui est 7 années à l'avenir. Alors, c'est normal d'avoir un contrat pour les droits, avec des paiements pour les droits. Et après ça, nous travaillons ensemble pour avancer le projet. Mais il y avait des autres entreprises qui sont intéressées à cette opportunité. Alors, je pense qu'il sera Mirabella, mais sinon, il y a des autres options. OK, merci.
Have I missed anyone? Thanks very much.
OK, thank you, everyone.